"Get off the table. Eat on the floor," yelled my daughter-in-law. "Kelsey." The shove came before my brain could even process her words. My heavy wooden dining chair scraped against the tile, and I lost my balance. I hit the floor hard, the dull thud echoing through the dining room of the house I had bought and paid for 15 years ago. I looked up. Kelsey's two friends' guests at this Sunday dinner that I had paid for let out a burst of laughter. It wasn't an uncomfortable, nervous chuckle. It was the cruel, barking laugh of people who have decided you simply don't matter anymore. My son, Derek, stared down at his wine glass. He didn't move a single muscle to help me. The cold, hard tile had a funny way of giving me instant perspective. For 2 years, I'd been biting my tongue, tolerating their disrespect ever since they moved in temporarily to save money. 2 years of shrinking myself in my own home, paying their bills, and pretending their blatant disregard for me was just work stress. But laying there on the floor, I didn't feel the urge to cry. I just felt a crystal clear sense of absolute clarity. I grabbed the edge of the table, dusted off my slacks, and slowly pulled myself up. Kelsey was glaring at me, her chin jutted out, waiting for me to burst into tears or start screaming. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I looked her dead in the eye, gave a calm, polite smile, and smoothed my shirt. "Enjoy this dinner," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "It's your last, free one." I pulled my smartphone out of my pocket and opened my banking app. For weeks, I had watched Kelsey swipe the authorized user credit card I'd given her for emergencies, draining it on expensive dinners, clothes, and her social life. With one tap on the screen, I slid the toggle switch to red. Card locked. In the next breath, I transferred the entirety of our shared household account into my private savings. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, turned on my heel, and walked to my bedroom without looking back. I could hear Kelsey scoffing behind me, loudly telling her friends I was just being a dramatic old woman. I shut my door and sat on the edge of my bed. My shoulder throbbed from the fall, but the gears in my head were turning. The era of being a doormat was officially over. The quiet of my bedroom was broken about an hour later by the sound of frantic footsteps in the hallway. They had ordered from a pricey local catering company, and the delivery driver had just rung the doorbell. "Derek, just use yours. Mine keeps declining." I heard Kelsey's panicked voice from the foyer. There was some muffled shuffling. Derek was trying to run his debit card, the one linked to the account I had just drained to zero. "Sir, the machine says insufficient funds," the delivery guy said, sounding completely over it. "There has to be a glitch in the system." Derek stammered, his voice cracking a little. "Just give me 1 second." Heavy footsteps jogged down the hall toward my room. Derek knocked twice. That was a novelty. Usually, they just barged right in. "Mom," he called through the wood. "Mom, our cards aren't working. The food guy is standing right there. Can I borrow your credit card?" I opened the door just a crack. Derek was pale, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead. Behind him, in the living room, Kelsey and her friends were watching with their arms crossed, looking incredibly impatient. "My cards are locked for those kinds of expenses." "Derek," I said smoothly, leaning against the doorframe, "my budget is tapped out. But the dinner, it's like $350. Kelsey's friends are right there. Please don't embarrass me like this. You have a full-time job. Kelsey has a full-time job. Figure out your own dinner." I gently closed the door in his face before he could stutter out another excuse. Walking over to my window, I looked out at the backyard, picturing the exact scene unfolding in the foyer. Kelsey had to swallow her pride and ask her own guests to Venmo her to cover the food. The humiliation sucked the air right out of their little party. There was no music that night, no loud, obnoxious laughter. The sound of forks scraping against plates was heavy and tense. Meanwhile, I plugged in my little electric kettle, made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, and read a thriller under my bedside lamp. The Bank of Mom was officially closed. It was a simple move, but the little glass house they were living in had just suffered its first massive crack. The next morning, the usual smell of fresh coffee didn't waver through the house. Kelsey was used to rolling out of bed at 9 a.m. to find a hot breakfast waiting for her, courtesy of my early bird habits. But that Monday, I woke up at 6, brewed my coffee, washed my mug, and put everything away. At 9:15, Kelsey came shuffling downstairs in her silk robe and fuzzy slippers. She made a beeline for the walk-in pantry, where I kept the imported dark roast, the good cheeses, and the fresh fruit she grazed on all day without asking. She twisted the doorknob. It didn't budge. She yanked it again, harder this time, letting out a frustrated sigh. Then she looked down and noticed the heavy-duty deadbolt a handyman had installed for me a few weeks ago. It had been hidden behind a decorative molding until I decided it was time to use it. "Derek!" She shrieked toward the stairs. My son stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. I was sitting at the small breakfast nook by the window, eating a piece of dry toast and reading the morning paper. "What is this?" Kelsey demanded, jabbing a manicured finger at the pantry door. "Why is there a padlock on the food?" Derek looked at me, silently begging for an explanation that would make his life easier. "The groceries I buy with my own money are in there," I said, not even looking up from the crossword puzzle. "I cleared out the top 2 cabinets by the sink for you guys. You can store whatever you buy with your money up there." "This is insane," she huffed. "We don't have time to go to the grocery store before work. What are we supposed to eat for breakfast?" I folded the newspaper neatly and took a sip of my ice water. "There's some plain oatmeal in your cabinet, and plenty of water in the tap." "Mom, you can't do this to us," Derek chimed in, using that soft, pleading voice he always used to dodge responsibility. "We're family. We live under the same roof." I stood up slowly, picking up my plate. I walked over to the sink and rinsed it out with deliberate calmness. Yesterday, I was shoved to the floor under the same roof, and nobody even offered me a hand. I replied, keeping my voice perfectly level as I dried my hands on a towel. "The rules have changed. If you want comfort, you're going to have to pay for it." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them staring blankly at the locked door. I didn't yell. I didn't lecture. I just let the reality set in. The end of the month rolled around quickly. For the past 2 years, the ritual was always the same. The bills for the electric, water, gas, and Wi-Fi would hit my inbox. I'd pay them quietly, and they'd keep streaming movies with the central air conditioning cranked down to 65 degrees. On Friday afternoon, Derek was sprawled on the living room couch playing video games. Kelsey was sitting in the recliner, painting her toenails. I walked into the room holding a crisp white envelope and stood directly in front of the TV, blocking the screen. "Mom, I'm in the middle of a match." Derek whined, craning his neck to see around me. I dropped the envelope onto the glass coffee table, right next to Kelsey's bottles of polish. "These are the household utilities for the month," I stated, keeping my tone strictly business. "The electric bill is through the roof from the AC running nonstop. The high-speed internet is in there, too. Your half comes out to $450. It's due Tuesday." Kelsey froze, the little brush hovering in the air. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. "Our half. We're guests here. You always cover the bills. Guests stay for a long weekend. You two have been living here for 2 years." I locked eyes with her, completely unblinking. "Starting today, if you want the lights on, you pay for them. If you want hot water, you pay for it. Derek paused his game, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Mom, you know money is tight right now. Kelsey just had to buy a new wardrobe for her promotion, and my car payment is killing me. We don't have that kind of cash lying around. That sounds like a budgeting problem. Derek, not an Elaine problem, I replied. It's your house. If we don't pay, they'll shut the power off on you. Kelsey smirked, clearly thinking she had checkmated me. That's true, I said simply. But I grew up without central air, and I know how to read a paperback by the window. I can survive without Wi-Fi. Can you? I turned on my heel and walked out the back door to prune my rose bushes in the blistering Texas heat. Through the glass, I could hear the muffled sounds of an argument erupting. Kelsey was blaming Derek for not keeping me in line. Derek was begging her to return the designer shoes she just bought. The financial squeeze was already suffocating them. And I hadn't even raised my voice. By Tuesday morning, the white envelope was still sitting on the coffee table, completely ignored. Neither of them had brought up the bills. Instead, I overheard Kelsey pacing the hallway on her phone, planning another get-together with her girlfriends for Friday night. Yeah, just come over to our place. We'll order pizzas and hang out in the living room, she chirped. My living room and dining room were filled with beautiful, heavy oak furniture I had picked out with my late husband, Gregory. They were gorgeous pieces, but they took up a massive amount of space. Frankly, it was too much furniture for a widow living on her own. As soon as they both left for work, I made 2 phone calls. At 2 p.m., a box truck from a local estate liquidator backed into my driveway. 4 guys hopped out, and I pointed exactly to what I wanted gone. In less than 2 hours, the massive 8-seater dining table, the exact one I was shoved away from, was loaded onto the truck. The oversized sectional sofa and the matching recliners went with it. I kept nothing but the small round breakfast table in the kitchen and a single, comfortable reading armchair, which I had them move into my bedroom. When Derek and Kelsey walked through the front door at 6 p.m., their voices echoed off the bare walls. What happened? Did we get robbed? Derek yelled, sprinting down the hallway. I stepped out of my bedroom, a bookmark tucked into my novel. No, I sold the furniture, I said casually. Kelsey dropped her purse on the hardwood floor. Her face went beet red. I have people coming over on Friday. Where are they supposed to sit? You're out of your mind. It's my house. Kelsey. I decided I wanted a more minimalist aesthetic. It was feeling cluttered. You did this on purpose to spite me, she screamed, taking a threatening step forward. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her with the mild detachment of someone watching a toddler throw a tantrum in a grocery store aisle. The last time we had dining chairs, you shoved me out of one. I assumed you preferred eating on the floor. Now you have plenty of room to do just that. I stepped back into my room and shut the door. I didn't argue further. Through the drywall, I listened to Kelsey furiously canceling her pizza party over the phone, while Derek stood in total silence. The physical space in the house, just like the finances, was mine again. Thursday arrived, and the electric company did not mess around. I knew the shutoff would happen sometime between noon and 3 p.m. The white envelope was gone from the coffee table, but a quick glance at my banking app confirmed they hadn't transferred me a dime. Right at 2 p.m., the constant, low hum of the refrigerator died. The Wi-Fi router went dark. The house fell into a heavy, stagnant silence as the brutal Texas summer heat immediately began to bake the roof. I was ready. I had already purchased a high-powered rechargeable camping fan and 2 heavy-duty power banks. I sat in my bedroom, perfectly cool with the fan aimed at my chair, quietly knitting a baby blanket for my friend Sharon's new granddaughter. At 5 p.m., the front door opened. The power's out, was the first thing Kelsey screamed, frantically flicking the hallway switch up and down as if that would magically summon the electricity back. Derek pounded on my bedroom door. "Mom, the electricity is off. You have to call them and pay it with your credit card so they can turn it back on tonight. Kelsey has to upload a massive report for work, and our cell service is terrible in here." I unlocked the door. My room was bathed in golden hour sunlight, and the breeze from my fan gently ruffled the curtains. "I gave you the bill last Friday. Derek, I told you it was due Tuesday. I thought you were bluffing. You can't just let us sit in the dark." "I didn't do anything. The electric company did," I said, adjusting my reading glasses. "If you want the lights back on, you can drive down to their customer service center, pay the past due balance, and cover the reconnection fee." Kelsey appeared behind him, already sweating through her blouse, looking absolutely furious. "All the food in the fridge is going to spoil," she snapped. "That's a shame," I sighed. "I hope you didn't buy anything too expensive." "Luckily, my pantry staples don't need refrigeration." I shut the door and locked it. For the next 3 hours, I listened to them pace the sweltering house. The heat eventually broke them. Around 8 p.m., I heard the front door slam. They had packed overnight bags and gone to a cheap motel off the interstate when Derek had to put on his nearly maxed-out credit card. I stayed in my dark, quiet house, enjoying the absolute, undisturbed peace. The power clicked back on late Friday afternoon. Derek had been forced to take a payday advance to cover the bill and the hefty penalty fees. When they finally dragged themselves back into the house, they were exhausted, broke, and miserable. Saturday morning was Teresa's day. Teresa had been my house cleaner for 10 years. A hard-working, no-nonsense woman. Before she arrived, I called her and gave her highly specific instructions, along with her usual payment plus a nice tip, strictly for the areas I designated. When Kelsey finally dragged herself out of bed around 11 a.m., Teresa was just finishing up in the kitchen. "Teresa, when you're done in here, make sure you really scrub the grout in our bathroom," Kelsey ordered, pouring herself a glass of tap water. "And there's a load of laundry in the hamper that needs to be run." Teresa wrung out her sponge, tossed it in her caddy, and dried her hands. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Miss Elaine explicitly told me to only clean her bedroom, her bathroom, the kitchen, and the main hallways. I'm actually off the clock now." Kelsey nearly dropped her glass. "Excuse me, I live here too. The whole house needs to be cleaned." I walked into the kitchen, carrying my empty tea mug. "Teresa works for me," I clarified, stepping between them. "I pay her to maintain my living spaces. If you want her to scrub your toilet and fold your underwear, you can negotiate an hourly rate with her and pay her out of your own wallet." Teresa gave a polite nod, grabbed her supplies, and slipped out the back door. Kelsey just stood there in the middle of the kitchen. The dividing line in the house was stark. My half smelled like lemon pledge and fresh laundry. If you walked past their bedroom, you could see piles of clothes, empty water bottles, and a thick layer of dust on the baseboards. "I am not doing your laundry." "Derek!" Kelsey hissed at him as he came down the stairs. "Well, I don't even know how to use the washing machine," he mumbled, looking utterly defeated. The house was officially divided. No screaming matches, no dramatic ultimatums. I had simply stopped being their safety net. Every little luxury they had taken for granted was evaporating into thin air, leaving them face to face with the ugly reality of taking care of themselves. The tension finally snapped on a Tuesday night. Derek came home carrying a cheap $5 pizza, and Kelsey looked at it with pure disgust. "I can't live like this anymore," she exploded, making sure I could hear her from the kitchen. "Your mother has turned this house into a prison. I'm going to stay with my mom. If you don't come with me, we're getting a divorce. She was baiting me, fully expecting me to panic at the word divorce and beg them to stay. Years ago. It might have worked. Instead, I calmly wiped my hands, walked over to the heavy mahogany front door, unlatched the deadbolt, and pulled it wide open. The warm evening breeze drifted in. I looked right at Kelsey. "Have a safe trip," I said quietly. The color drained from her face. She looked at Derek, waiting for him to slam the door shut. "Mom, please don't do this," Derek whispered. "I'm not doing anything," I replied, my voice steady. She pushed me. She screamed at me. And now she's making threats to leave. I'm just getting the door for her. The bed and breakfast is permanently closed. Realizing her bluff had failed spectacularly, Kelsey stormed down the hall and started aggressively shoving clothes into suitcases. Derek just stood there, staring at the empty space where the couch used to be. He finally realized he had zero leverage left. It didn't take lawyers or eviction notices. The sheer discomfort of having to act like responsible adults did all the heavy lifting for me. The next afternoon, I came home to find cardboard boxes stacked by the door. Kelsey was outside, angrily throwing bags into the trunk of an Uber. She didn't look at me. Derek stood in the entryway holding a plastic tote, looking completely deflated. The reality of paying first and last month's rent had finally hit him. "We're heading out." "Mom," he mumbled to the floorboards. "I see that." He hesitated, searching for the enabling mother who had always shielded him from consequences. "Aren't you going to tell me to stay? I love you." "Derek," I said softly, "but I lost a lot of respect for you the day you watched your wife throw me to the floor, and you chose to look the other way. You need to grow up." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard, pulling his house keys from his pocket. He set them gently on the console table. "I'm sorry, Mom." He walked out, and the Uber drove off. I closed the heavy door, slid the deadbolt into place, and dropped his keys into a drawer. The silence wasn't lonely. It felt like breathing pure oxygen. A month passed. The house felt huge, but it never felt empty. I bought lush indoor plants and set up a beautiful wooden rocking chair right where Kelsey's obnoxious recliner used to be. With my finances breathing again, I finally fixed the garage roof and bought those custom curtains I'd been eyeing for a year. On a quiet Tuesday, my friend Sharon came over. I brewed coffee from a pantry that no longer needed a padlock, and we split a piece of crumb cake. "You look 10 years younger." "Elaine," she laughed. "I dropped about 350 pounds of dead weight." I smiled. She asked if I had heard from Derek. I pulled out my phone. He had texted on Sunday, asking to grab lunch next week. I told him yes, I explained. "But we're splitting the check." I didn't hold a blinding grudge, but I wasn't naive anymore, either. Derek was going to have to earn his place in my life again, step by step. After Sharon left, I stayed in the kitchen. The late afternoon sun warmed the exact tile I had hit so hard a few months ago. I didn't feel humiliated looking at it anymore. It was simply the place where I finally woke up. For the first time in a very long time, the absolute master of my home, my money, and my peace was me.